Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast. My name is Phil Thompson, and before I introduce my guest, absent from our podcast, who's rarely absent, is our founder and CEO, Steve Lacy. He has got another meeting today, so Steve is not with us. In the last, probably the last month or two, we've had Michael Gray working with us as well, and Michael's also got a meeting, so he's gone. But we do have a guest here today we've had on here several times, and his name is Paul Alan Clifford. Paul, how are you?
I'm doing wonderfully. How are you, Phil?
All right, Paul, doing great. And today we're going to talk about ProPresenter 7. And one of the reasons that we're going to talk about that is they actually give you now the ability to do live streaming. And I want to get with Paul in just a moment to talk a little bit about that. We'll ask Paul if you're new to this or new to ProPresenter. We'll ask him to tell us a little bit about what ProPresenter is, and then with this new option that ProPresenter has with streaming, we'll get into that. But before we do that, I feel like personally, I always want to share something. You know, a lot of times we goof around a little bit on this podcast before we get into things. And in light of what's happened in our nation the last 10 days, the last roughly 2 weeks, I mean, not only are we dealing with the pandemic, but the whole situation that came up with George Floyd in Minnesota almost 2 weeks ago now. And I just want to just take a moment and personally share that I'm just grieved about what happened, and I'm grieved about the injustice and that happened there, and honestly still happening in our country today, and the situation that our brothers and sisters are facing even now as we're in the 21st century. And I just I'm involved in ministry. Like Paul is, and like many of us involved listening to this podcast. And I feel like the scriptures tell us that God, that injustice makes God angry. And it should make us angry as well. And if one person's denied justice, I think that we cannot ignore that. And I think that if one of us isn't safe, none of us are safe. And black people have been dealing with this for literally hundreds of years. And so it needs to stop. And I can tell you, there's a scripture that I think some of us are familiar with. It's in Proverbs chapter 31. And it talks about open your mouth on the behalf of those unable to speak for the legal rights of all who are dying. And so this is my personal feelings on this, but I will say this as far as on behalf of our company, JSL Solutions, we have been honored to serve black pastors in black churches now since 2001, almost 20 years. And it's an honor for us to continue to work with black churches, not just in the United States here, but globally. And so we will always we will continue to support black pastors and black churches. And again, I can't speak for everybody on our team, but I can tell you that I know everybody on our team very well, and they love people. They love the communities that we serve, and I'm happy to be working with people that care about injustice and that are willing to help anyway. And that's how our feelings are at streamingchurch.tv, which is one of our companies here. And anyhow, I'll stop from there, but I felt like I just wanted to say that because we haven't really said anything about it. This has been going on for quite a while, and I want to stand with those people that need our help. But anyhow, Paul, thank you for being with us today. We sure appreciate it.
Well, you're welcome.
So let's talk a little bit about ProPresenter 7, but let's go back a little bit. Let's back up the tape. ProPresenter has been around now for quite a while. My church uses ProPresenter to display images on our projector and graphics and all that. But for those who might not be familiar with ProPresenter, tell us a little bit about, what it is and how it works.
Yeah, so what I tell people is that just like a Volkswagen Beetle can get you from point A to point B, it's got four wheels, it's got an engine. So is a Ferrari. It's got four wheels, it's got an engine. So on one level, you can say those are the same, but they are not the same. they're just totally different animals.
I'll take
And
the Volkswagen. But anyhow, go ahead. Sorry, I'm going to blow your analogy. Sorry, go ahead. I'm sorry.
well, my point is that for each situation, one would be better than another. If you need to get from point A to point B in so little time that people say, I thought you just left when you arrived, you're probably going to want to use the Ferrari.
Okay,
So,
right.
but if you like to have a kind of a quirky experience, you like seeing little kids uh, hit their brothers and sisters, then you're going to choose a different mode of vehicle.
The slug
So,
bug, yeah. Okay.
but all that to say, just like those two are both cars, but they're totally different. So PowerPoint and ProPresenter are both presentation software, but they're totally different. And ProPresenter can put up slides just like PowerPoint can, but it can do so much more. And it's just really a premium live production piece of software. And with what they've added for live streaming, I think that's just proof positive of what I'm saying about it.
Yeah. So I should, in the past, I've talked about your bio, who you are. Paul Alan Clifford is somebody that is, I call you our adopted tech guru here at streamingchurch.tv because I've deferred to you many times. But Paul, you have a background in technology. Tell us very quickly what that is, just so people can go, oh, that guy must know what he's talking about.
Yeah, so I actually have a seminary degree, and I just kind of on a lark because I needed another class. I took technology and ministry as part of seminary, and I found it very interesting that I would rush home to do my homework for technology and ministry, but for New Testament history and criticism, for example, I was literally a semester late on a paper. I mean, like the semester ended, I went through the entire next semester, and I finally turned it in later, and my professor should have failed me, but he was very kind to me. So seeing just the difference between those two, I started doing technology and ministry because it just fueled me, and it felt like something I was made to do. And so I've just slowly expanded what I did. Primarily, it's video stuff that I deal with. Although if you're a videographer, you've got to know something about sound, you've got to know something about lights.
Right.
And then not maybe 7 or 8 years ago, I put up a tutorial on ProPresenter 3 back then, and I was just amazed at how many people wanted to know more. So I just dove arms and elbows into the software, and
Right.
that's where you find me today, arms and elbows into ProPresenter 7, getting it to do things that other people say, no, it can't do that. Wrong. You just have to be creative sometimes, and sometimes it's in there and you just didn't know where it was.
Yeah. So, and then also, I refer to you as Paul Alan Clifford, but you probably just go by Paul. But if people Google you,
Right.
they would Google Paul Alan Clifford and probably find you right away because you have a website, which is Trinity. Tell me, I didn't write this down. I should have. I always do, but I didn't this time. What's
Yeah,
your website?
it's trinitydigitalmedia.com. So, and all that spelled
TrinityDigitalMedia.com.
all the normal ways.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. So, and then you're also on Facebook. You have a Facebook page. Is it Church Streaming? What's the title of the Facebook page?
Yeah, so I have a Facebook page that's Trinity Digital Media,
Okay.
but I also have the church live streaming
That's
group
it. Yeah. Church live streaming.
that focuses more on church live streaming. I've also got the ProPresenter users group, which I've now partnered with Renewed Vision on. I started it and they noticed once it got to a certain level, and so now we're partnering on that to make it just a huge resource for churches that use ProPresenter.
All right, so let's get back to ProPresenter. My church uses ProPresenter. I don't usually drive it; somebody else does. So it gives you the ability to do lots of things. And up until ProPresenter, and the latest version is ProPresenter 7. Am I right? Okay. Before ProPresenter 7, I think our church has ProPresenter 6. So, it does lots of things. The primary thing that I guess probably most people would do is they would put up images, use it to project images on screens, in your church facility. And do you want to add something to that before we get to 7? There's more it can do, but.
Right. So, for example, if you're not familiar, I used to do freelance tech work, and every year there was a conference where they would bring in these people, and here's what they wanted to do at the beginning of every session. They wanted to play a video with separate audio, then they wanted to switch to another video, and then they wanted to switch to slides for the first presenter. That process with PowerPoint took them 2 PowerPoint machines, 3 people running it, a video switcher, and it was just this convoluted process.
Right. Yeah.
I tried to convince them to go with ProPresenter, even though it's designed for the church, because that same process is hit the space bar, hit the space bar, hit the space bar, hit the space bar. One person can do it all. It's really simple. It's very reliable. If you've ever played video with PowerPoint, sometimes it's reliable and sometimes it's not. And that's just really annoying.
Yeah. Now, ProPresenter, it was originally set up for Mac, right? But they also have a Windows version. The only thing I would say is I've had problems at times because we have ours on a Windows machine. And if Steve Lacy was here, he would jump in and basically, insult anybody that's using. He wouldn't insult people, but you know what I mean. He's not real big on Windows, and I understand that totally. I totally get that. So the only issue I've ever had with ProPresenter, and it may not even be a ProPresenter, but it's running it on Windows. It didn't seem to work as well as those who were running it on an Apple machine. I mean, have you gotten any feedback from people on that?
Yeah.
Or is it just me?
So, starting with ProPresenter 4, they had a Windows version, and every iteration thereafter, it got better. Right. So Pro 6 was pretty good. Some people even would tweak their machines just right, and they'd say, oh no, I don't see how it could be any better on a Mac. But people that had gone 50-50 back and forth, maybe the youth ministry has a Windows machine, but it's a gaming rig, and so it should be awesome. And then their main sanctuary has a Mac Mini, which you wouldn't think would be as awesome, but it was better. So that's what people would say with ProPresenter 6. Okay. With Pro 7, they rewrote it from the ground up. One of the big problems was that it was 32-bit in Windows 64. With ProPresenter 6, and now it's 64-bit just like the Mac version is. Okay. So there are some, right now my biggest source of consternation is I'm having arguments that pop up on the ProPresenter users group where people are arguing which is better, Mac or Windows for ProPresenter. And they're both right. It really just depends on your situation. If your team is all Windows developers, well, don't get a Mac. That doesn't make any sense. But if your team has been using Macs since 1984, right. Don't get a Windows box. That doesn't make any sense. But sure. A/B comparison, they're almost identical now.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. And I'll talk to you a little bit about upgrading from 6 to 7. But let's jump into 7, because the biggest thing, and one of the things we're interested in is, of course, I see that you can do streaming video now with ProPresenter 7. So how does that work, Paul? I get ProPresenter 7. So it's obviously got the live encoding capabilities, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we're doing audio only, but I've got a video switcher here.
We're actually doing video and audio here. So
okay.
So people can see this.
Okay, well,
if you're watching on video here,
then let me pop it up, okay. And I'm gonna hide my.
Yeah, I'm going to make you the speaker view here so people can see this a little bit. Yeah, we are doing video here. I forgot to tell you that. So
Okay.
that's why I was putting makeup on earlier. Okay.
I should have paid attention.
I know, right?
So here we are in Pro 7, and one thing that you'll notice is that there is a little word up on the upper right-hand corner that says live.
Right.
And
Yes.
so if I click on that, I can first go into capture settings. Once I have this all set up,
Okay.
I can just click start capture and it'll work. But
Okay.
I can go into capture settings, and here, let me drag that over because it's normally on a different output. And I can choose any of the outputs because ProPresenter 7 inherently can do multiple outputs. I think I've got 5 connected right now on this machine that we're doing Zoom on at the same time, by the way.
Right.
And I admit it's a beefy machine, so not every church is going to have this. But you'll notice that I can select any of my outputs, and I remembered wrong. I've got 6 connected outputs that I could choose to live stream from, and they can have lyrics formatted differently. So if you wanted full screen stuff for in person, but a lower third over a camera, then you could do that. And you could even send a stage layout live streamed if you wanted to, which now with Pro 7 you have more flexibility, so you can send different screens as part of the stage. You can make your own multi-view, all kinds of fun stuff. And then you can decide, do you want to do disc, which is just to record it, or do you want to do RTMP for live streaming? You put in your address, you put in your key, you put in the resolution and frame rate that you want down there, and that is one thing that I really love that they've done is they've put how much upload speed you need for that.
That's good.
So if you just because your cable modem says that you have 20 megabits per second does not mean that you have 20 megabits per second up, which is what matters. So you could choose the appropriate for how much upload speed you have, and then having chosen RTMP, and it'll do RTMPS too if you wanted to do that. There's a checkbox for save local copy, so you can record, live stream, or both with Pro 7.1, which is this particular version. Just came out like a week and a half ago.
Right. So now let me ask you a question. Authentication, because some providers require that you have a username and password. Does ProPresenter allow authentication?
Right now, the only stuff that I have to deal with are the streaming address and the key.
Stream key.
So if there's the ability to embed that in either one of those, which I know some do that, then you could do that. And this is their first attempt at this, and I think it's only going to get better from here.
Sure. Yeah.
So.
Well, and that's fine. But that was a question. Actually, somebody today asked us on support. I didn't take the call or the chat, but they asked. There's somebody's actually using it, and they were, and I think they are anyhow, or they're considering using it. And that was one of the questions was, where do you put the authentication? So with our company, we do require authentication. However, we also have different live encoders that we work with, and some of them don't require authentication. So we can, our company, streamingchurch.tv, we can make that work. So I could easily make ProPresenter 7 work for anybody that wanted to use our credentials. But that answers our question. So that's good. So that sounds it sounds very simple. I mean, you just set it up, and it's, if you're listening to this, anybody listening understands at least a little bit about streaming video. You do have to have some type of a live encoder to make that happen. Let me ask you this. So if you're going to plug cameras in to be able to stream, you've got to plug cameras in. So let me go back to you, because I know you're pulling it. And we have audio as well as we have an audio version of this podcast which I think
Mhm.
probably most people use. But we have the video, so I'm going to go back here and look at what you're sharing with me. So if I wanted to plug a camera in, do I still need some kind of a video capture device? I imagine I would, right? Because
Yeah, I mean,
ProPresenter's going to have to recognize. They're not going to just recognize the camera without some kind of an adapter, right?
probably. And there is one caveat. I've noticed that there's a lot of churches that really love the PTZ optics cameras,
Right. Yeah.
and they have an NDI output, network
Okay.
digital interface.
Right.
Well, if that's the case, if you've got NDI, floating around your network and it can
Mm-hmm.
handle the speed of it, then ProPresenter 7 can take an NDI feed as a video feed. So,
Okay.
so
Okay.
other than that, you would need a capture device.
Yeah.
You're actually the video that people are seeing of me. I'm coming through a Canon T3i, and that's
Yeah.
actually going through ProPresenter because it's going over USB, because the camcorder,
Mm-hmm.
the DSLR, its HDMI out is a little wonky. So
Right. Yes. Yeah.
if you're watching the video and you look, you'll see that this is exactly the same video that's down
Mm-hmm.
below in the little thumbnail at the bottom that I have the picture-in-picture, and that's coming in live via that mechanism. So USB capture, uh, Thunderbolt capture, NDI. It can also do Siphon if you had it coming in through another piece of software on the
Mm-hmm.
same Mac.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a lot of flexibility. It's not perfect yet. Some of the USB capture cards, the audio isn't coming in, so you got to
Mm-hmm.
do a little finessing to get all that working.
Yeah, that was my next question. Is there a way to sync? If your audio is getting out of sync or something, how do you fix that? Is it a problem? Has it been a problem that we know of yet?
Right. So on USB capture devices, it has been a problem. So that's why it's a bit of a
Okay.
right now. Renewed Vision is still working on that to make sure that that's rock solid. So
Okay.
when you try and use a USB capture device as of today, um, the audio doesn't come in. So you have to do some hacking a bit to make it work. Nothing like diving into code, more like using other software to sync it up, kind of stuff. Um,
Okay. So that could be problematic for
right,
some people.
right.
All right.
But they're working on it. I would expect that they're going to get that taken care
Sure.
of as soon as they can figure out how to make it always stay in sync,
Right.
that kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. May have to make some adjustments or something on different things like you
Right.
do on the other live encoders that are out there. Okay. Well, that's interesting. All right. So I guess my next question is, I have ProPresenter 6 at my church. What does it cost to upgrade to ProPresenter 7 if I want to do
Well,
live streaming?
it depends on a couple of things. First off, do you have just a single seat or do you have a site license? It's going to be more for the site license.
Okay.
Um, if you're going ProPresenter 6 to ProPresenter 7, the other thing is how recently did you upgrade to ProPresenter 6? Because occasionally I hear people that say, oh no, I just bought ProPresenter 6 a week before ProPresenter 7 came out. Talk to
Mm,
Renewed Vision because they might be able to do something for you there.
okay.
Um, I've seen a few people that got really happy when they heard what Renewed Vision was doing for them, where previously, moments before, they were really sad and on the verge of anger, and then they talked to them and were relieved and happy. So talk to
Okay.
them about that. I I want to say that it is about $300 for a single seat, and um, I want to say I'm just blanking on the numbers,
Uh,
but they do have a slightly new. Uh, they've got a new way of doing things that I should mention, Phil, and that is that instead of just coming out with a new big release every few years, it was like 4 years between ProPresenter 5 and ProPresenter 6. They're doing kind of a service contract kind of model where it's not like a subscription where you quit paying and it quits working the same day like Photoshop does. It's more like you quit getting updates. So if you've got an old computer that's running, 5 years from now, let's say you've got an old computer that runs ProPresenter 7 fine. Use that until that computer dies, no problem. But then you go out to buy the new computer and it won't run the old version of ProPresenter 7. Then you would need to pay the fee to get the new updates and stuff. So,
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Well, that's good information to have. Okay. Super. All right. Good. All right. So that's good information, Paul. Let's see. What else do we need to cover here before we go? There's a couple little tweaks that they're probably going to have to make for the audio in some cases, but it is kind of nice to have one place where you can do everything, so to speak. What kind of processing power do you need to have to run ProPresenter 7? I mean, just ballpark idea.
Yeah, so I would look for something modern, probably an i5 ideally. I've seen it run on i3s, but probably an i5 or better. I'm actually running it on an i9, a 2019 16-inch MacBook Pro that I got. So that, I perhaps overbought, but it's really nice to know that I'm good for a while.
No doubt. Yeah.
You want, if you can do it, dedicated graphics card, the Intel Iris Pro graphics, they're okay for one output, but the second someone says, hey, can we send another output that is formatted differently to a different place, then it gets a little iffy,
Right.
Probably at least 16 gigs of RAM, 4 gigs of video RAM is nice. SSD, I've seen some churches that get an iMac with what they call the Fusion drive, which starts out great, but as it fills up, it slows down. So I recommend an SSD.
Yeah, sounds like Windows. Yeah.
Yep. Let me show you this that I'm doing. So this is actually, I made a multi-view. Let me open up my other camera. So right now I have a multi-view that has just, live video coming from multiple places, and that's all done in ProPresenter. And I made that. So I can have up to 8 live video sources. I can switch between them. So let's see here. I've got the cut transition selected. So you'll see in the upper right-hand corner here, the live / recording one I made. I can go back and forth. It also is changing down in the lower right-hand corner. I can do a cross dissolve as well. So it's kind of like having a video switcher, an encoder, and presentation software all in one. So that's really incredible.
That is good.
Just to have that.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, that's awesome stuff. Good deal. I see your color bars there. We're running out of time here, but I see the color bars for test pattern. I was doing a test the other day with our company, and I streamed it to one of our company's Facebook pages. And Facebook jumped in and said, you're in violation of copyright. And I'm looking at it, and there wasn't even any audio. It was just the color bars test pattern. They shut it down. It's like, it wasn't even a video.
Yep. That's actually a pretty common thing that I'm hearing is people say, well, we put up color bars before we go just to let people know. Yeah. And for some reason, some big media company claimed the color bars, which they shouldn't have. That's crazy. So now every time someone puts color bars up, they get a copyright notice.
That's crazy. Wow. That is, I wonder, we were laughing about, my goodness, because, there's churches that have problems, with YouTube and Facebook, and we've had Paul on here before, folks, and we've talked a lot about those things. But all right, so we're out of time. Paul, this has been good. I really appreciate it. Let's see. So people, before we go here, let's repeat your contact information. How do people get a hold of you if they have questions, if they, particularly about ProPresenter 7, but as we know, you are well educated on a lot of those different things. So how can they reach out to you?
Well, of course, I've got my site, trinitydigitalmedia.com.
Okay.
You can also see me on YouTube, youtube.com/Paul Clifford, or just Google Paul Alan Clifford, ALAN.
Right.
And that will take you to me.
Yeah.
So I used to say, just Google any ProPresenter question you have and Paul Alan Clifford, you'll find me.
And it's probably still true, right?
Yeah. It's just I haven't gotten all the Pro 7 stuff up yet.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, still working
trying to
on
catch up. So there are a few things that if you Google about ProPresenter 7, I don't have a video yet, but I will.
Okay, good deal. Well, Paul, we sure appreciate your time. You're always fun to talk with, and we have a lot in common if people are looking at the video. I won't say anything more about that. But But
we can't cut our hair, otherwise we'd lose our church tech abilities. We're kind of like the Samsons of church tech, isn't that right, Phil?
There you go.
That?
That's a good excuse. I'll use that next time I get criticized by certain people in my company. So all right. Well, look, we're out of time, but again, thanks, Paul, and. On behalf of Steve Lacy, who isn't here today, and Michael Gray, who also has a meeting today, my name is Phil Thompson, and thank you for spending some time listening to this Church Solutions podcast. And as usual, if we can help you in any way, that's what we do. We love to help churches and ministries. If we can help you, not just with streaming video, but other things, we are more than happy to be able to step up, and we just love helping churches use technology. And if we don't have the answers, we know somebody who does. Wait, I'm trying to do the pointing on the screen here. I'm pointing to Paul, but we know Paul, and we know other people too that can help. So folks, take care of yourself during this COVID-19 time. It's a difficult time in our nation, as we said earlier. Please take care of yourself, take care of your loved ones, and we'll catch you again next time on another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast. Bye-bye.